Hello everybody, you're welcome back again to the Reggae Appreciation Society. One glorious day, at the age of 13, I was walking past a record shop when I heard an irresistible, bouncy, infectious reggae rhythm booming from the speakers just outside the store. I stepped in for a listen and was greeted by one of the sweetest sounding voices I had ever heard riding that lovely instrumental, and asked the store owner who was playing. He pointed at a cassette case on his table and replied, "That's Eddie Lovett." That was the day I got introduced to probably the greatest, most authentic, prolific, and most talented American reggae artists of all time. I had gotten a request to do a video about Eddie Lovett, and I had marked it down as one for the future. But as this is the Christmas season, I got inspired to make it after I remembered that this incredible American crooner had an amazing Christmas album aptly titled Merry Christmas, which came out in 1983. America is one of the last places on the planet where reggae took hold. But since then, quite a number of reggae artists have sprung up over there. But I honestly haven't found any other US reggae artist with such a natural and I dare say spiritual bond with the genre. Johnny Nash is considered the first American reggae artist thanks to his overall popularity. But it turns out that Eddie Lovett started out in reggae at about the same time he did, and even undertook his pilgrimage to Jamaica before Nash. And when Nash's interpretation of reggae music was heavily infused with soul and pop sound, Eddie Lovett's music was as earthy and authentic as the best of Jamaica's rocksteady greats at the time, like Bob Andy and Slim Smith. But for all of Lovett's incredible credentials and achievements over his 4-decade career, he's still relatively underreported and somewhat unknown outside of his core fanbase. So without further ado, let's take a look at Eddie Lovett, the mysterious American king of lovers rock. Eddie Lovett was born in 1949 in a town called Cairo in the state of Georgia in the USA. He was the fourth of 10 children and showed incredible singing talent as a really young boy. At the age of 9, he joined a gospel singing group called the Cairo Echo Juniors. His flair for music was far from being just a phase, and it marked what became a lifetime path and calling. After finishing from Miami High School, he formed a singing group called Eddie and the Tropics, and the band cut his teeth playing on the hotel circuit in Miami. He kept this up even while he was a student at the University of Miami, from where he eventually bagged a degree in psychology. He got acquainted with Caribbean music during his time with Eddie and the Tropics, from playing island music to cater to audiences in Miami, which sits right next door to a number of Caribbean islands. After he was done with his degree in 1968, his incredible voice and tight showmanship caught the attention of a producer named Luther Dixon. Dixon had noticed how well he took to Caribbean music and believed that Eddie had a bright future playing and performing in that field. He asked Eddie if he was interested in going down to Jamaica for a few weeks just to look around and see if he could soak up the tremendous musical energy that was exploding out of the island. Dixon had just formed a label called Steady Records and was hoping to record some music on that imprint. So Eddie jumped at the idea and both men would make that trip. When Eddie arrived in Jamaica, he felt totally at home and began to mingle like a native. Dixon had connections to Federal Records, which was Jamaica's first ever recording studio, owned by a pioneer record producer, Kenneth Corey. Incidentally, it was the birthplace of Rocksteady, and where Johnny Nash would eventually record his hit song, Hold You Tight. So Dixon took Eddie to Federal Records for him to possibly record some songs written by some of the artists who frequently hung around the studio. In those days, he met and became close friends with the likes of Bob Marley, John Holt, and Ken Lazarus, and he recorded a number of songs, and one of them was the track Too Experienced, a song written and originally performed by Bob Andy. Upon release, it became Eddie Lovett's first hit in America and reached number 32 on the Billboard Top 100 charts. Seeing that something was really agwan in Jamaica, Dixon and Eddie rented a house in the Red Hills area of Kingston, and instead of staying for just a few weeks, they ended up living there for 5 whole years. And the year after arriving in Jamaica, he would release his first album in the self-titled Eddie Lovett. In 1969, Eddie fully immersed himself in the Jamaican culture, music and lifestyle before returning to the US in 1973, hot and cracking and ready to unleash his reggae energy on America. He was the possessor of an exquisite, smooth, seductive but powerful voice and was a natural fit for what would become lovers rock. In many ways, his style and swagger cut the picture of Gregory Isaac's American cousin. After releasing a slew of wonderful singles in the 70s, he released the brilliant album Rockers for Lovers in 1980, an incredible 8-track compilation with fantastic instrumentals from maestros like Lloyd Parks, Willie Lindo, and Val Douglas, and put together by legendary producer Errol Thompson, who had been the main producer at Joe Gibbs Studios in the heydays of that outfit and had put together classics like Culture's 2/7 Clash 3 years earlier. Rockers for Lovers is a lovely album with classic songs like Imagination and Shining Star, and Eddie Lovette's voice had a timeless quality that transported listeners back to the classic age of the classic Motown singers, only this time with irresistible reggae instrumentals, and it earned him a powerful and fast-growing fan base, an extremely loyal female following. His next solo album, Hits on Reggae, would come out in 1983. It's actually one of my favorite lovers rock albums, and it featured Eddie in blistering form. His vocals were piercing, powerful, and incredibly soulful. It featured mostly covers of pop and R&B classics like Marvin Gaye's Sexual Healing. It's a very bold statement to make, but I personally think his vocal performance was at par or even slightly more impressive than Marvin Gaye's, but that's just me talking. Let's not even go into the amazing, solid instrumentals that featured on every single track. He continued to work with Lloyd Parks and the same backing band, with Kenneth Corey, formerly of Federal Records, as his producer. Corey had by then sold Federal Records to Tuff Gong and had formed a label called K&K Records, which released Lovette's albums. He closed the year with the album Merry Christmas, a delightful Christmas album that's been a fan favorite for 40 years. And he released albums quite fairly consistently, following the template which had always worked beautifully for him, doing covers of some of the greatest love songs of all time with such incredible singing and emotive performances that never came across as cheap or exploitative, despite the lack of originality. He always put a spin on those original records in a way that kind of built on them and not just used them. One huge example was his interpretation of Neil Diamond's Red Red Wine, which he recorded in a calypso version that works beautifully. And to crown his golden voice, he was an awesome performer on stage, turning out incredible performances that oozed charm, sincerity, and humor that always gave his fans some wonderful experiences. Many times, in the middle of his songs, he would share hilarious tips on romance to his audience's great delight. Eddie Lovette was simply an amazing showman and consummate artist. Between 1985 and 1991, he would release 5 solo albums as well as a joint album with US Virgin Islands calypso artist Mighty Pat, all wonderful bodies of music that were of great quality. As the 90s unfolded, he stopped recording new music but kept on doing his thing on many stages and concerts both in the US and abroad. But unfortunately, he began to experience health challenges by the middle of the 90s and after a while was diagnosed with lung cancer. He would sadly succumb to his illness and passed away on April 29th in the arms of his loving wife, Bernadette Lovette, at the age of 55. It's my firm opinion that he went down as probably the greatest American reggae artists that we've seen yet. Nowadays, we have many US reggae acts like Soulja, Stick Figure and the likes doing really big things. But Eddie Lovette emerged at a time that there was almost no one else promoting the reggae sound and culture right there in America. As the thing I loved the most about his music is that he never sounded like an American trying to do reggae, as it came naturally to him as a fish in water. I believe his authenticity sprang from his 5-year stay in Jamaica, as well as working with the likes of Bob Marley and Bob Andy at the very dawn of the reggae era. And while he may not have enjoyed the highest levels of commercial success, his fan base is extremely large, vibrant, and still growing. Plus, newer generations of fans have continued to discover the music of the great Eddie Lovette, and he finally seems to be getting his flowers as a true icon and legend who is without a doubt the king of American lovers rock and reggae overall. So there you have it. Thank you for watching the video today. Please leave a like, subscribe, and until next time, God bless.